I've decided that tea is going to get me through 2019, just like all the other years. Anyway, ladies and gents, the iPhone 10 was released along with the 8 and 8 Plus, and you may know that the iPhone 10 kind of took over in terms of the limelight and took over in a lot of the sales. The iPhone 10 was like the new and improved design. It had the notch, it had the first OLED screen, well, in an iPhone that is. It had the polished titanium, it was very shiny, but it also had a very high price tag, and in that we kind of passed a few very good phones in my opinion, the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. So thanks to my good friend Nathan for letting me review his phone. Today we're going to be looking at the iPhone 8 Plus in 2019, and a lot of the stuff will carry over to the 8, but just know that we're reviewing specifically the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, ironically, the most obvious thing about this design is how boring it is. And I think that's probably the most obvious thing about the phone is you have the internals and most of the specs of the iPhone 10 in a body that kind of goes right the way back to the iPhone 6 Plus with a few different changes. It's kind of like the iPhone 7 Plus but in a glass sandwich form, so you get that dual camera bump in the top left on the back, and then you have like those massive bezels. You've got no headphone port, and the overall design, the clicky buttons, everything's pretty much the same. It's just got a glass back which enables wireless charging, and also the IP rating jumps up a little bit. The solid state home button cum fingerprint scanner is fast and accurate, and solid state meaning that it's not actually a button, it's kind of a pad, and you press down and it actually comes up like a pressure sensor, and then you'll get some kind of force feedback. It's called taptic, I believe is the Apple term for it, and you get your different levels of pressure sensitivity. I think we all go for like the highest end one because that gives the biggest click. The squared off 5.5 inch 1080p IPS display is great. I think the bezels around it are pretty huge, like it's pretty much been the same for the past few years. And what I like about this design is it's ergonomic, it's fresh, weirdly enough, even though it's older, because all devices look pretty much the same these days, including the new iPhones. I like having that kind of more squared off look. 16:9 means most YouTube videos are going to fill that without any kind of black bars or cropping in. Don't get me wrong, you still get that premium feel in the hand with the glass back. It's pretty big, even though the screen's not that big this day and age. But the whole thing feels premium. The kind of seams between the glass and the metal, they're still there. It's really nice. It's not kind of like the cheaper glass sandwich designs that we see these days where you kind of get a flatter edge and it's not quite as smooth and polished. This is definitely a premium feeling phone. It just kind of feels a bit big, a bit chunky, a bit cumbersome. Not necessarily in the sense of, let's say, a Note 9, which has all of that kind of rounded glass and it has like a massive screen with hardly any bezel. It kind of feels like a big premium phone, and then you turn it over to the front and it's kind of a less premium looking display. And that display itself is actually quite good. It's not the highest end in the world, but Apple does a really good job of calibrating their 1080p IPS displays out of the box. I think they just look really good. I believe they're sourced from LG, and you get great viewing angles, great sharpness, great colors. I think color's probably the best bit about this IPS panel. And unfortunately, we don't get any kind of high refresh rate despite the IPS nature, although hopefully in iterations to come with iPhones, maybe we'll see that trickle down from the iPad down to the iPhone. You're not going to be getting kind of always on display features or really good contrast ratios or even like really poppy colors, but what you are getting is like a solid display that's not going to look dreadful like some lower end IPSs. It's definitely a high end IPS panel. It's calibrated well. Watching videos is great because you have the kind of bottom firing speaker and then the earpiece kind of hybrids as a stereo. I really like that. I think Apple probably does this the best in terms of like the sound, the bass and the fullness to the sound. There are a lot of very clear, very loud speakers, but I feel like Apple does it in a way that kind of maybe isn't so balanced, but it gives you a more fun listening experience. Under the bonnet is definitely where the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus shine. We've got the Apple A11 Bionic, which is found in the iPhone 10, very, very fast. And actually in a lot of Geekbench tests and stuff, this tends to be better than the iPhone 10. I'm not sure why, maybe it's clocked slightly higher or something. But we get an overall really, really good package. We've got 3GB of RAM, you can either get 64 or 256GB of storage, I believe, and it comes in a range of different colors. The overall performance is really snappy, and there's one thing I need to point out, and this is kind of anecdotal. I feel like the smoothness of the iPhone 10 isn't quite translated to the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and not because it's not capable, but I feel like those gestures actually add some like perceived speed. Even though it's not faster, it feels faster. Not sure if this is just me, and there are a few people I've spoken to online who say the same thing, but it's kind of like a, do you like gestures or do you like the home button? I personally actually prefer the gestures, which I wasn't expecting, but the home button is still good, it's solid, it's something that if you're not used to iPhones, or maybe you're new to iPhones, it's like a good way to start. In synthetic benchmarks and in games and in browsing through the OS, like this thing is only a year old, it's super fast, wouldn't worry about slowdown for at least another year or so, and even then, Apple software support, and remember this is on the latest iOS, Apple software support going into the future is going to last a good 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, we've only just seen the loss of iOS support on the iPhone 5S. Whilst it's not the greatest size and definitely not the most ideal, the 2700 mAh battery in the iPhone 8 Plus is enough to get most people through a day, and you'd expect such a large phone to easily get through a day. Unfortunately, Apple's kind of older phones don't tend to do very well with their batteries, because in recent years what they've tended to do is stack and layer and kind of change the way their battery's laid out in the entire phone. This one's not too bad. As I said, it gets through mostly a day for most people. I feel like people that power use their phone are going to want to top it up during the day. Unfortunately, you don't get a fast charger included, but you do get wireless charging, and wireless chargers are really cheap. So say you're at your office or you're at work, and at lunchtime you just plop it on a wireless charger for like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. It is going to trickle charge, it is going to be slower than fast charging, but you do get that little top up. And most people I find who buy these iPhone 8 Pluses aren't going for the top end, so they're not constantly using their phone. So the kind of target demographic kind of makes a bit more sense. I would say that the battery life isn't going to be as big as we kind of expected, you know, between the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, like that big a difference. But what you will get is much better battery life than the original 8. Just expect to have to go out and buy the wireless charger and fast charger, although I would consider buying used, especially for the iPhone 8 Plus, and sometimes, in fact a lot of the time on eBay, you will find bundles that come with that fast charger included. Connection speeds on both 4G and Wi-Fi were just great. I mean, I always find Apple's software and overall bandwidth to be really, really good. I feel like their software may play a big part in this, because as me and the lover of tech, Ben, have talked about in the past, we tend to get notifications a lot faster on the iPhone compared to an Android, even if they're in the same room connected to the same hotspot and they're getting the same kind of speeds. Not sure if this is Apple's software, Apple's hardware, or maybe it's just coincidence, but the overall cohesion of all of those things means that you're getting really, really solid speeds, whether you're indoors or, I mean, it all kind of depends on region, but where I've managed to get little to no signal on my Poco phone, I've managed to get like really good signal on higher end iPhones such as the 8 Plus and such as the 10. In terms of cameras, these are shared mostly with the iPhone 10, minus optical stabilization on that second sensor on the back. We get a range of shooting modes, including 720p at 480 FPS, 1080p at 240 FPS, UHD 4K at 60 FPS, this is all on the back by the way, and the front facing camera can do 1080p at 30 FPS. The overall look of the video is better than most, I mean actually most 2018 flagships. Because Apple's really good stabilization, especially on that primary sensor on the back, as well as that electronic stabilization comes together, we get some super smooth videos, some really good colors. And what I found with the 8 Plus is it tends to adapt to different colors and different kind of lighting scenarios pretty well, where a lot of other smartphones will get like tripped up by going from really bright to really dark. This one seems to kind of very smoothly transition. So if you're doing vlogs or something like that, I feel like this could be one of the phones to go for. Although at this price range, you could probably get some better. Although I very much doubt that at this price range, you're going to get anything that does everything as good as the iPhone, because of course it has the portrait modes and stuff. Great photos, great videos. It's all wrapped up into a good camera. Overall then, do I recommend the iPhone 8 Plus? Well, yes, but only if you really want one. And I say that for a lot of smartphones, because there are a lot of smartphones in this £450 to £500 price range, like seriously a lot, used and new. You could get kind of a lower end used Note 9, you could get a Mi Mix 3, OnePlus 6T. There are so many different new phones, and then you've got the other iPhones. It's very close, especially in the UK, to something like a used iPhone 10, which is only around £100 more. I say only because that was quite a big jump to a lot of people. So there's a lot going on in this price range. And I feel like the iPhone 8 Plus, out of context, is just a really good phone. You know, you've got a good screen, got stellar performance, decent battery life, great cameras. You've got a lot of a well-rounded device, but you lose out on a lot of enthusiast features, you know, micro SD expansion, reverse wireless charging, if you can really call that an enthusiast feature, super wide angle cameras, OLED display, IP68, you do get IP67, but there are a few things missing that you could go out and spend a little bit more for, or you could just find used models. In the used category on eBay, I find the iPhone 8 Plus to be a decent value on the 64GB, but 256 can push the price higher than a lot of its like really big competitors. The only thing I would say about the iPhone 8 Plus that I would worry about is kind of going into the future and losing money if you plan to resell in the future, since like I said, it's the old design. It's not got that OLED display, it's not got the bezel-less design, it hasn't got the notch, so it can be perceived as a lower cost maybe in a year's time, whereas if you had an iPhone 10, it's still kind of in the family of the bezel-less notch phones, so it will sell for a little bit more. But if you don't care about resale, then go for it. I want to give a massive thanks to my friend Nathan for letting me shoot his video. I'll leave his Instagram or whatever on the screen if he wants me to do that, otherwise it will be blank and I'll look like a complete idiot. Massive shout out to this cup of tea for getting me through this very long evening of lots of cars going past the window. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please do like, dislike, comment and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons and my Discord members. You guys are awesome, and especially in this kind of weird Christmassy time, there's been a little bit of drama, and I'm glad that you guys supported me on that. Other links will all be in the video description as always. I've been Ryan Thomas for Failtech, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.